Hello, it's been a long time since I've posted here, but I thought I'd share my illustration process here on YouTube, seeing as it's what I do when I'm not animating. Teaching is also a great way to solidify your knowledge in what you're showing others. Bear in mind I'm still learning myself and have never done a tutorial before, so it won't be perfect. I wasn't much for looking at how to draw tutorials when I was learning. I was more of an endlessly copying references kind of person. The measuring method never really worked for me because I think in 3D, being taught how to recreate this specific image in a certain angle didn't help me understand what a horse looked like. This is less of a how to draw a specific horse head tutorial and more of a way to look at horses tutorial. To help with my preferred method of thinking in 3D, I've brought along Steve. Steve will show you the 3D forms the best he can. However, Steve is only a specific type of horse, a general riding horse, and there are many breeds of horses that look different to this. Even horses of the same breed have differing proportions and makeup. Steve's features are also ever so slightly exaggerated, but you're free to take screenshots of Steve and use him as reference. The first thing about drawing horse heads is, the main skull area is bigger than the muzzle end. So when drawing horses from the front, you draw one square inside a bigger square. I personally don't recommend using circles in your construction lines, as it makes it harder to see forms. Instead, I build the head like it's made up of a bunch of blocks, like I'm sculpting it. You can see from the side that the muzzle tapers and curves off. Of course, there are some cases where this rule is broken, like when you get really close and perspective starts to warp. A horse's head compared to its body changes a lot depending on the breed and even the individual. However, it is usually smaller than the chest area or can fit inside it. The neck is also just longer than a head's length. A horse is a prey animal and thus fits the general rule of having the eyes on the side of the head. The eye placement is something I struggled with a lot. They aren't snug inside of the form of the head, and instead poke outwards to the side a bit. However, they do not poke upwards in most angles, as the forehead is slightly higher up. They aren't facing completely side on, and are actually on a diagonal angle when looking from above. They tend to match the angle of the nostrils. As for the shape of the eyes, they are very circular, with a tapering end at the front to represent the tear ducts. The skin around the horse's eye folds quite a lot, and a deep top eyelid crease is our common sight. The horse's ears lay behind the cheekbone and at the topmost part of the head. They are tubular in shape, like a cylinder has been cut from a deep diagonal angle. From the front view, they tend to be tapered at both ends, with the thickest part being at the highest centre point. From the side view, they are tapered at the top end. Nostril placement has also been a challenge when learning to draw horses. They are a big part of how to differentiate between different hoofed quadrupeds. If placed too far to the front and centre of the muzzle, it begins to look like a moose, and if the nostrils are too horizontal, it can begin to look bovine. The nostril on a horse is at the front of the muzzle, but not on the front plane. It is placed where the front and side planes meet, facing diagonally from the top view, like the eyes. They are at the top end of the muzzle, but the nostril hole was lower. Only the folds of the nostril poke out from the main form. From the front view, they will poke out to the side of a silhouette when flared. When closed, only the outer part of the outer fold will poke out of the muzzle form. The structure of the muzzle is a hole surrounded by two curving folds. The back fold is on top of the form, with the front fold curving inwards behind the top of the back fold. It vaguely resembles a comma. The curving and circular nature of the folds help define the horse face from other creatures. Another defining feature of a horse is its large cheekbone and cheek ridge. The cheek is quite circular at the bottom and is almost half the face in length. It starts at the back of the head and goes until just after the eyes. It has a very defined top that starts from the eye and goes diagonally forward. This shape is obvious from the front view of the horse, as it can stick out a lot on some horses. It is a shape that often catches the light at the top, so it can be a good landmark to plot down when painting or sculpting a horse. Other forms that often affect the silhouette are the muscles on the mouth and chin. The chin pokes downwards on many horses and can be the bottommost shape when drawing heads. The muscles behind the mouth are often defined and curved downwards out of the main silhouette. The horse's lips are large and can be broken down into two circular shapes on the top front of the lip and a long running line on the bottom lip. The corner of the mouth is also often defined when drawing and has a ridge that sticks out. The horse's face is filled with many details. Whether to include these details or not comes down to your preferences in your art style. For some people, including these details is too much noise. Steve is a rather simple guy details-wise, but here is a sculpt of mine that includes these details. The first noticeable detail is the veins on the horse's cheek, usually sprouting from the tip of the cheek ridge. They can appear to go backwards and forwards from this position, although the definition of these veins is often affected by recent exercise, excitement, or stress. Another is the temple and forehead muscles. Often you can see a hint of this structure on the horse. It includes a dip in the skull just above the eyes and a bump going outwards just below that behind the eyes. There are also two hills at the very top of the head. Most of the times this is not very pronounced and hidden with skin and fat, but knowing it's there helps to not give your horse a tiny flat forehead. The muscles behind the mouth are often pronounced enough to be noticed on most horses. They are a collection of multiple muscles, but can often be simplified to just a bottom ridge and a top ridge. They are both curved and can often be seen from the front view. The front of the muzzle has some more defining muscles, particularly the two muscles causing creases in the centre that are often seen when the horse is flaring its nostrils. However, a decent amount of horses have too much fat there for them to be visible. Honourable mentions in the details departments would be the nose ridge. This area is very bony and it's the dip in the skeleton that sometimes makes a visible line going down the horse's nose. Another one is the whisker bumps. They can sometimes be very pronounced in horses, causing bumps in the skin around the eyes and muzzle. The nose ridge is something that differs a lot in different breeds of horses, the most common being a straight nose profile. These are seen on most warm bloods. A famous variation of the nose is the dished or concave profile. These are seen most commonly on Arab horses and small ponies. Horses can also have convex or Roman noses, where the nose bridge goes outwards. These are common on draft horses, or breeds famous for it are the Cladoruba or the Lusitano. Practicing and studying horse heads is the best way to learn how to draw them. For personal practice, any image of horse can be used. However, if you want to share it online, it's best to use horse stock images, which are images taken for the purpose of being used for artists in creations. You can find plenty of stock sites that have collections of these images. A good source of horse stock is a site called DeviantArt. I'm going to be using some images taken by a user called Horse Stock Photos. Tracing images is a good way to learn anatomy when you're a beginner or have not studied the subject before. However, simply tracing the outlines will only get you so far. When I am tracing for practice, I will draw on top of the image and copy the contour lines of the shape, making sure to draw curved grids following what I remember or see the muscle anatomy is doing. A different method is turning the image into a bunch of different coloured sections, like I'm drawing a sculpture of the picture, solidifying my knowledge of the different planes and sections of the face. Écorché and muscular diagrams are a great way to learn anatomy. It helps to have something to trace and reference that has the outer muscles visible. Of course, not everyone has an écorché model to use. You are free to use Steve to trace over. Further this practice by then turning him into a skinned image so you can realise how the muscles affect the skin. Reversing this method is another good way to practice. Get any stock image and then draw the muscles onto it. You will usually need a few muscle diagrams to help you remember where the muscles are. For practice, I usually place the image to the side and then copy it, taking note of each shape and landmark. Then I will take the image and place it on low opacity underneath my drawing, fitting it as best as I can. I will then duplicate my sketch layer and hide one. Then I will edit the sketch to fit the image, taking note of what I did wrong. After this, I will hide the image, then unhide the duplicate sketch and turn it into a different colour, so I can see how different my sketch is to the final piece. Drawing horse heads is a difficult challenge by itself, but learning and developing your own style of doing so adds to the journey. It's good to find motivations to continue your drawings, like participating in November for example, or a drawing challenge like my 100 horse head challenge. If you want to join a community of fellow equine art learners, I recommend the horse art tutorial server linked in the description.